Last week, Frontier Developments offered me a chance to play F1 Manager 24 on an early build. And before I jump in to show off that early build to you all, I do want to say that this is still an early build. Assets, gameplay, liveries, ratings for drivers, all of those are subject to change and may not be final. This early look also only lets me to race the first 3 races of the season. As soon as the 3rd race is done, it just boots me back to the main menu, so everything that I'm about to go over is just for those first 3 races. With that being said, when F1 Manager launched with F1 Manager 2022, although it had its issues, it provided a fun, casual F1 sim experience from the start. By the end, it came to be a little more shallow of an experience for me personally, as the difficulty of the game was quite on the easy side and really allowed me to take any team that I wanted to the winner's circle with ease, and because of that, I put my time in, but I kind of fell off of it. But as I was playing F1 Manager 22, I said to myself, man, I really hope they come out with a My Team for this game next year. You see, for me as an individual, I like to create something from scratch. I want to own that thing and take it to its glory. So the announcement of F1 Manager 23 came, and it didn't have a My Team. Now, I don't want to dog the game, and although some might disagree with this personally, I believe that F1 Manager 23 was better in every way to its predecessor. However, most of the changes they made to the game were more on a surface level than I had hoped, and with no My Team, I didn't really last long playing it, even though it was on Game Pass from the start. Which brings us to F1 Manager 24. A proper My Team is finally implemented into the game, and getting my hands on it for the first time, I must say that the sandbox for it is actually quite good. For the My Team, you can start your journey however you see fit. You can take the ultimate sandbox approach and select your ideal starting scenario, or run one of their presets to start it all off. Starting it your way gives you the control of your starting balance, all of your facilities with the ability to fine-tune the way they start, and your overall car performance. Followed up by that, you can select any driver that you'd like, or any staff to start, either real or generated. You could select your powertrain, all of your branding with a pretty robust creator, and finally your team principal. But before I take you to the actual My Team, I do want to go back to those pre-built scenarios that we just saw and kind of go through each one of those. I want to do this because after going through and starting each one as a career just to see what it looked like from the start, I must say that Frontier Developments has done quite a good job at fine-tuning these scenarios to give you whatever start you may desire. A hungry newcomer is a step up from starting as the absolute worst. You have a back-of-the-pack car, some mid-drivers and staff, and newly formed facilities. They still allow you the choice to switch your staff and drivers if you would like, but I like the idea of just running with what they give you to feed into the scenario that has been provided. Technical Breakthrough is exactly what it sounds like. A well-renowned engineering outfit have made the most beautiful car, and they want to break into the world of F1. The kicker is they don't have a lot of money starting out, and although they have put together the fastest car and a great staff, everything else is pretty terrible. So you kind of have to come in and take a good car and build it into a winning team. Phoenix Rising takes an already established motorsport team and tests you on whether you can take a great HQ already built up for you and build up the car around that HQ. It starts you with top-of-the-line facilities, but they are all money and nothing else. So you gotta take a really poor car and build it up to a championship-level team using that already founded HQ. But let's say you just want to make Red Bull off the rip. Well, the industry giant gets that done for you. You start with a top contender car, drivers, staff, and all the money in the world you would need to upgrade your middle-of-the-road facilities. This comes with high expectations though, so be wary of that, as I do believe even creating your My Team, you can get fired as the team principal. And finally, there's the Automotive Legacy. This is the start that is middle of the grid. It is right smack dab down the middle in all of the starting quality, but gives you a pretty good chunk of money to play with. And as you look through these 5 different scenarios, you can kind of see that F1 Manager 24 gives you pretty good pre-built scenarios for a lot of different types of gameplay that you might be looking for. You have the real bad team, you have a great car and staff, but bad at everything else, great HQ, but poor at everything else, great at everything, or a right down the middle, mid-pack start. Personally, for me, when I think my team, I think of creating everything from scratch and just fine-tuning the scenario however I would like to start. But I know that there are probably a lot of people who will just take one of these scenarios because they do cover a lot of ground and get you into the action extremely quickly. For me, though, like I just said, I started my approach with the sandbox and created Turger Racing. I wanted to see what it was like to create a team that started from the true bottom. And let me tell you, they really start you out at the bottom. You begin with a car that I would say shouldn't even be on the grid, and even the first round of upgrades that you get on that car is still barely enough to keep you even up to pace with the back of the grid. The first couple of races you do, you will be getting lapped like there is no tomorrow. And once my first upgrades came through, I got to a point where I could at least keep up, but it was still extremely difficult. Now again, I was only given access to the first 3 races, so I'm uncertain how the car will do the more you play, or how the car will do when the other teams start their upgrade cycles. But from where I sit, I think this year's game and doing it this way could bring a really, really good challenge for those who want it, especially if you turn up the difficulty in the settings too hard. Not tied to the My Team in particular, but to the career mode in general, there is also some additions and changes to the game that I noticed. First off, the reserve driver feature has been completely removed and replaced with affiliates. These affiliates will have access to all of your facilities and also race in the lower series to improve as drivers. They also have the ability to come up and race in P1 of the F1 weekend for extra XP, like the reserve drivers did from last year. This feature is essentially reserve drivers, but more fleshed out and used a lot more efficiently to train someone that you might have your eye on for the future. There's also the new mentality hub. In the 3 races that I was allotted, nothing really came up here, but from what I read, there are events that may happen over the course of a season that will need to be handled by you, the principal. Maybe a driver isn't working well with a race engineer, maybe a driver isn't happy that you aren't giving him the fastest car, maybe they want more money. Different things will come up during the season, and you will have to navigate that. However, for the sake of the time that I spent with the game, nothing of this nature came up. Hitting the continue button for the first time will take you to something quite new to F1 Manager, and that is sponsorships. Since it is a My Team and not something that is already decided because of real teams, you get full control of what sponsorships you take, and each one comes with its own benefits and disadvantages. You could take a bunch of money up front, or rely more heavily on race performance, with each one having the potential of making you more money in the long run. After a mainline sponsor selected, it is time to select your secondary sponsors. These come with the added benefits of providing you more money, but also come at the cost of some with a drop in something. For example, Raka gives you a nice chunk of cash, but makes it so that one of your drivers has to do things for them during the season. Arcor is the same, but will drop staff effectiveness as they will have to do guided tours throughout the season. For this portion, you can select up to 5 of these. I'm going to guess that these will also change the better your team performs, especially since there are a ton of them in the livery section. But after you select them, you confirm, and it gives you the option to place these however you would like. Now, currently in the early build, this livery system is a little funky. At first, some of the sponsors can't be moved or even removed in some instances, something they are aware of and I'm sure will be fixed for release. But this gives you free reign of how you would like to place the ads on your car. It even gives you a way of changing colors the ads as well to match what other color scheme you have a little bit better. Overall, honestly, this system worked really well. And at the start, I really like the options that they give you for just the overall livery selection and ad placement. Once you are done there, though, it is time to choose your overall sponsorship plan. This gives you all the control this year on how you want your team spending its time for sponsorship obligations. In the top right, you have an engagement quota that needs to be met each 6 weeks. This quota is dependent on how many and also which sponsors you chose during your sponsor negotiation. Choose which activities you would like to meet this quota, but keep in mind the negative effects of each one. Picking a race day appearance gives you a lot of engagement, but will mean that driver, whoever it may be, will race poorly when it comes to race day, or at least worse than what they would have at race day. But once you have your selection for quota, you can see the effects each will have on your team. If it is to your liking, hit confirm, and this is set in stone for the next 6 weeks and cannot be changed. Although I was only able to set this once because I only had 6 weeks in game that I could play, it was actually a pretty solid addition to the game. This system gives you so much more ownership of the activities that your team has to do throughout the season, especially when compared to past iterations of the game. So for that, A+. The game also got a little overhaul of the UI, and I must say, this is a great change overall to the flow of the game. The facility screen now has everything laid out front and center and removes the needed extra button clicks to get into something, while also providing all the details needed for whatever thing you want to upgrade. The overall button layout at the bottom, too, is much more sleek and allows for easier traversal. The buttons never really had to take up the entire bottom of the screen, and the smaller layout makes it much more appealing and also easier to navigate. I would say the best way to describe the UI is removing unnecessary button clicks, making the overall experience more fluid. When playing a simulation manager game, you spend a lot of time in menus. Eliminating as many transitions as possible within those menus makes for an overall better experience, and F1 Manager 24 does a really good job at making sure that experience is a smooth one for you. It also helps that the overall transitioning of the menus is smoother and runs much better compared to past iterations. To the UI and UX team, I commend you.
Now, can you tell the audio team to please make it so I don't become deaf when I load the game because the starting menu is as loud as a jet engine? Thank you.
Getting to race weekend, F1 Manager has simplified the overall race prep, going for just choosing the place that you finish the race. Instead of choosing qualifying and secondary objectives, rolling it all up into finishing position, streamlines everything and gets you into the race faster. Getting to the actual racing portion, there are a couple of things that I do want to touch on. Firstly, when it comes to the car setup, there does seem to be more variance between drivers this year. They have always had this, but there were times during me playing through where the differences were quite drastic. Not too drastic because this is a racing game, but drastic enough that it is noticeable. I don't know if this comes down to actual driver profiles on what they like and dislike, but I do like the variance. And I'm probably in the minority here, but I love the mini game. I've seen people complaining about it in the past on YouTube and in their Discord, so I definitely think I am the minority, but providing more variance in this minigame honestly just gives the whole race weekend preparation a lot more legs for me. AI teams also seem to be more aware of conditions on tracks, especially during qualifying. They will wait for optimal times to go out to run the lap and make sure they can achieve a faster time based on those conditions. With that also came problems, as the AI wasn't leaving themselves enough time to run a second lap on even drier conditions, leading me, somebody who's essentially just driving a go-kart on the track, to get P3. Although I fucking crashed out in the first corner and caused a red flag. The graphics for this iteration also seem to be more fleshed out than they were in previous years as well, except for motion blur. You know what? I'm actually going to rant real quick. I'm sorry. This game, when paused, is absolutely gorgeous. But then you unpause it, and the game becomes one of the ugliest things I have ever seen. It's been this way since the game first launched, and there still isn't a way to turn off motion blur. I hate motion blur. The continued need by game designers to add in imperfections in visuals drives me crazy. I tried some tricks that I found on the Steam forums to remove the motion blur, but it didn't work. The game, while in motion, is still kind of ugly and washed out, even on my 4070, and that just sucks. I understand the idea behind motion blur, especially for a racing game, as it makes you feel like you're going fast. And maybe it's a way to mask FPS problems. I don't know. But for the love of everything holy, please add in an option to remove the motion blur. I beg you. Back to the actual racing itself, and AI battles seem to be even more advanced this go around. F1 Manager 23 took a big step up in this regard, but 24 seems to take another step. In 23, there were still times of DRS clusters where groups of cars would stack up with no one really gaining anything in the process. Mainly this was due to poor logic with overtaking and defending by the AI within the game, but in 24, cars seem to battle a lot better and will actually create space, leading to the field actually getting spread out like it would in real life. Mechanical failures are also in the game now, but I didn't see any during the first 3 races of the 2 separate saves I did. Which does make sense, as car parts haven't really hit a higher threshold of potentially failing. Not to say that they can't fail immediately, even for newer parts, but just the chances for that are much lower. I would say that on-track racing is quite similar to the offering that we had in F1 Manager 23, but just a little more refined, which in the end I think is a good thing. And that's it. That was my time with F1 Manager 24. My teams actually sucked. The cars were awful. And that was great. I'm really excited for the launch of this game. And with the addition of my team, I'm sure this will lead to me putting in a lot more hours this go around than I did in last iteration. Also, this isn't a review of anything. This is just me showing you what I saw or found in F1 Manager 24 with the 3 races that I was able to play. Whether the game will be good or not when the game launches, we'll just have to see when the game launches. I'm also sure that there are probably things that I did not talk about today that you might have a question about. If you do have a question about something, make sure to leave a comment down below, and I will try to answer it to the best of my ability. With that, though, I bid you farewell. Thank you for watching today, and I will catch you on the next one.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in